Hey guys, National Master Sean Lei here with another game analysis of one of my own games. Today I have a special one for you guys here today, so I hope you guys stick around until the end of this video. So, today this is a game that I played approximately exactly like a year ago, and it is one of my strongest, if not the best game that I've ever played in my entire life. And whether or not I won this game or not, you guys just have to stick around again. Now, this game is one of my favorite games I've ever played because it shows the strength of one of the openings that I truly enjoy myself, called the Philidor Defence. And it's an opening that I started playing once I got a bit too busy with school and wasn't able to really study chess as hard as I used to. And I really like this opening, as you probably heard in previous videos, as it's an opening that I'm able to execute really easily. And it's not an opening that's too hard to learn or understand. In the future, I could make a video for you guys to help you guys understand how to play this opening. But for now, you guys will just have to be content with games like these ones. So, this is a game that I played against one of the strongest players in Canada at the time. And he still is one of the strongest players. Now, I won't say his name because for privacy issues, but just recently, he just achieved his final international master title and is above 2,400 FIDE rating. So he's quite strong here in Canada, as we don't have many strong players here. But this was a game I had the honor of playing against him in a team event at the Greater Toronto Chess League. And it was a game that I played on first board for my team, and it was a game that I executed quite fine. So let's get straight into the game now. So the game began with pawn e4 from my opponent, and I played pawn d6, the beginning of the Philidor Defense. The point of this opening is it's a hypermodern opening, which means that we give up the center early, but we try to attack it with all our pieces in the future. As you will see in future games or in the future opening analysis, our pieces will go into squares like this, so all our pieces will attack this pawn. Perhaps we will castle here and then put the rook on e8, in which it also attacks there. So as you can see, all our pieces are going to work together. However, in this variation my opponent played, it's one of the rarest variations that your opponent can play against the Philidor, but it's also one of the most aggressive, and if you don't know what to do against it, there are some issues. However, luckily for me, I studied this a long time before, as it is something that you do need to watch out if you do play the Philidor Defense. So, pawn d4, giving up the center as black, and we play knight f6, executing our plan early. Hypermodern defenses nowadays mean that we want to attack the center, and we want to keep attacking it. Knight c3 defends, we play knight bd7, defending against pawn e5. Now knight e2. Knight e2 is one of those tricky variations, because usually this knight comes here, and then you play e5. After knight e2, you still play e5, but you have to ask yourself, in a position like this, what is the point of knight ge2? Why did he not move the knight over here? The reason is quite simple if you think about it. By moving the knight here, if the bishop was to go to g2, fianchettoed style, the knight will be in the way, and it won't be able to defend the pawn. However, as you can see after my opponent's next move, h3, it's clear what his plan is. He wants to play pawn g4 and potentially go for a kingside attack against my king. And these are often very scary. And there's a maneuver that you want to do as black that can help stop this and help neutralize it. I'll be showing it to you soon. So after that, bishop e7 is played, pawn g4, and this is a very important move that you guys want to play if your opponent is going for a pawn storm. However, he has not yet castled his king. Because white has not yet castled the king, as you can see over here, he hasn't said he's going to castle kingside or queenside yet. So we don't really have a target ourselves for black. So we can't really just ignore it. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to play a very important type of move, which is a stopping move against your opponent's pawn push that is a bit premature. Now, this is a completely different matter if our opponent already castled. If our opponent already castled on the queen side, we don't want to be playing moves like h6, which is the move that we play here in this variation. The reason why is because it's a waste of a move and our opponent can use this as a weakness. However, right now we don't know if he will castle kingside or queenside, so it is alright. So bishop g2, and now comes the very important maneuver you guys really want to know and understand if you guys come to play the Philidor defense or see any variations that play h3 or g4. In fact, this maneuver is also very common in the Rai Lopez. So I hope you guys pause your videos and help me figure out what the best move is here for black. Alright, I hope you guys paused your videos and I hope you guys found this maneuver super strong, super important. And that's knight f8. Well, the idea, in case you guys haven't figured it out yet, is to go to g6 and potentially go to h4 and control this f4 square to stop future f4 ideas. Now, our bishop on c8 can also come out this way in these positions now. So our position is slowly getting better and slowly unwinding. My opponent played queen d3, and I just played my knight g6 move. Knight g6 also doesn't really worry about h4 moves because, as you can see, this bishop and knight both target this pawn and doesn't allow it to move. If my opponent ever plays a move like g5, I can just capture it, and after bishop captures back, as you can see, this h3 pawn is now weak, and we can use this as a weakness by putting our knight over here. For example, let's say our opponent tries to play g5 anyways, we can capture, and maybe even play a move like knight here. As you can see, this pawn is now blockaded, our opponent's kingside attack is no more, and this bishop is under attack. That is one of the biggest weaknesses of playing this variation for white. However, it can be scary if you don't see this maneuver, which is very important. After the game, my opponent said he wasn't expecting me to play a move like knight f8, knight g6, but he said in these positions for black, he's completely fine and there's nothing to worry about. So rook g1 is played with the idea if I played knight h4, he can just move the bishop back, so I don't play knight g4 and knight h4, because that's a bit silly, right? Why play into something that my opponent is playing into? However, rook g1, even though it protects the bishop and allows it to go back, it gives me a very important square. It gives me not an important square, but a very important idea. I know that the white king is castling queenside now, so here I begin with my queenside attack, which begins with c6. And c6 allows the very optimistic, very happy b5 move, with potential of playing b4, as you will see later in the game, and potentially a pawn push over here. As you can see, with rook g1, h4 ideas are never happening anymore because this knight, who is so powerful, will be capturing it for free. However, we still need to worry about f4 moves, because f4 can be quite scary, as we will see. So after c6, my opponent played bishop b3, which makes sense, he's just developing pieces. I played b5, and my opponent played f4. As you can see, white has complete control of the center with all his pieces controlling these squares like this. And it looks pretty dangerous, actually, for black. However, luckily for black, he has a lot of ideas in these positions. Because our opponent has so many squares here, his pieces aren't the happiest, as you can see. I have space over here. And if you have watched our space positional video up there, if you guys want to click and watch that one on strategy, we learned that if our opponent is attacking on two sides of the board as white, we want to attack on the other side. With that in mind, the next move is quite obvious. We play b5 and say, if you want to capture here, I'll capture there. And my position is quite good because you can capture here and I can capture there, threatening your rook, and I can capture back afterwards with my bishop here. So let's say something like, I don't know, capture there. We can capture here, and after capture there, we can capture there. And they cannot capture us here because we promote to a queen. And I felt like a position like this is quite fine because even though my pawn structure might not be the strongest, or he has this complete control, as you can see, my pieces are very strong on the dark squares, and our opponent cannot castle anymore, which will give him a lot of issues. So, my opponent, who was considered one of the best calculators in Canada, he's very good at that, realized that this is not the best idea, and moving a knight backwards is kind of admitting defeat. So, knight a4 was played, and this is when I began my rapid development against my opponent's pieces. I realized that this knight is misplaced and this queen is misplaced. So my next two moves allow me to help develop all my pieces very quickly, very rapidly, and I was able to get into a pretty good position. As you can see in this position here, if we would check the evaluation on the left side over here, you can see that black is actually already better, even though white's position looks quite strong with such a strong center as you can see here. This is because of the modern openings type of ideas. We give our opponent the center, and we also give him overconfidence at this point. And by doing so, we can strike back extremely quickly, as you will see in our next few moves. I hope you guys pause your videos and try to find the next few moves that give rapid development for black. You don't win anything, you don't win any pieces, but it makes white into an uncomfortable position. So I hope you guys pause your videos. And if you guys did, I hope you guys saw the move Queen a5. Queen e5's idea is I attack the knight, and this knight is kind of trapped. So you have to play the move pawn b3 to defend the knight But if you do so, moving the queen to a5 wasn't just trying to win this knight as in a cheapo, but instead its idea is to play bishop a6, attacking the queen with the queen support. After that, my opponent played c4, and as you can see, this center is quite strong. And if you're a beginner, you might not know what this type of move is, but this is called en passant. En passant in chess means in passing in French. And its idea is, by the pawn moving up 2 squares over here, we can just capture it over there. We can just capture over here, and that's a rule in chess. So after that, queen takes c3. And in this position, I thought to myself, do I want to trade queens and go into an endgame that I might not be able to do better in? Or I can play a tricky move, which is what I played, queen b5. I say I don't want to capture your queen. I'm just going to play queen to b5, threatening your knight and also threatening checkmate. And in this position, it's a big dilemma. I want you guys to try to think. Now this is hard. If you guys can find this, I'll be very amazed and I'll be very happy at how strong you are. Pause your videos here. If you were playing white, what would you play here? If you don't play the best move here, your position is quite bad, quite dubious, and in fact, you'll probably be lost. My opponent thought for quite some time here, but eventually he figured out the best move here, which I was very disappointed in. I hope you guys paused your videos. And if you guys did, I hope you guys figured out that the best move here was castling. With the idea if I capture here, bishop f1 skewers the queen to the bishop. However, let's go through the other variations and figure out why they're all lost. Why is bishop f1 lost? The idea is very simple. This knight can just capture on e4, and now my opponent's down a queen. I mean, not down a queen, but down a very important pawn, his center pawn, and his king is wide open. This is not good for white. What if our opponent instead decided to play, instead of bishop f1, bishop f3? The idea here is quite simple again. I hope you guys can figure it out. We'll just take on e4 anyways, because this bishop is overworked. Oops, not doing that. It's defending the pawn, and it's also defending against checkmate. If he decides to capture there, we just get checkmate. So that's not good for our opponent here. So instead, what else can he do, right? It's actually quite difficult, right? There's not many moves he can do due to the weakness here. And if our opponent ever does something like queen c2, we can capture here, capture there, capture there, capture here, and we can take this pawn for free. So all the normal moves look like they're lost, but castling is good. However, if you check the evaluation again, as you can see, it's slightly better for black, because black's position is already open on the queen side. Black can easily attack the white king. Meanwhile, black's king, even though there are pawns running up the board, it's not quite clear how he'll attack black. So after this, black castles, white castle, black castle, and now it's a full-on pawn storm and opposite kingside castling ideas. In these positions, it's very important that you guys know how to take advantage of your opponent's weak king. So my opponent played rook g to e1, protecting his knight because the knight didn't really have any better squares to go to. If the knight ran away, we can just capture on f4. So we capture on f4 anyways, which is kind of admitting defeat move. Don't capture on f4. It's a mistake that I made, and it was a beginning of a couple mistakes that I played myself because I was a bit scared. In positions like this that I've come to know are quite good for black, as you saw through the evaluation. However, by playing a move like e takes f4, you kind of gave up your advantage because now white can just capture back, and now he just has a massive space advantage. So I captured, which was a mistake, and I kept capturing because I thought to myself, perhaps by trading off everything, because I have less space, it's a typical idea to trade pieces because then the pieces you have left have a lot more space to use. Now here I missed a very important move, which is pawn d5, because I thought pawn d5 didn't quite work because of a move like here and queen bishop here, but I forgot to realize that after the queen moves and I capture the rook, if they capture here, I'm not necessarily forced to capture back here, but I can just move the bishop back. So that's kind of my mistake, but that's okay. d5 is a very important move that you want to play in Philidor positions because it opens up, as you can see, your opponent's center. And that's the entire idea of hypermodern defenses, as I said before. Blow up your opponent's center. But I play knight d7 with the idea of just playing the bishop here. It's a bit passive, but it stops moves like e5, and it does its job. King b1 was played, and I played rook c8, defending this pawn. Knight b2 was played, and I played queen b7. As you can see, I'm playing very passively. I'm just trying to defend all my pieces. h4 is played, and you cannot capture these, and you shouldn't ever be thinking about moves like these, because rook h1, and now you gave your opponent an open file to use. Meanwhile, you don't have quite the open files you want to use at this point, because your opponent is defending quite well. This knight on b2, even though it doesn't look very good, it's defending quite well. So this is when I decide to break through. c5 is a very good move, and it's a very important one. It says, I'm going to break open your center, or I'm going to push forward and break open your king. Whichever one you choose, it's not very good for you. So my opponent played queen g3, trying to scare me and say, I'm going to take on d6, but I say, I'm going to play c4 anyways. And the idea is, if your knight captures, I can capture back because your pawn is pinned to the king. If you decide to capture with a pawn, I can capture here, and now your king is open on the b file. Now the important variation to know is what happens after bishop captures pawn. You capture back, queen captures, and you take on b3. Or, sorry, you don't capture on b3, that was my mistake. You play c3, and you say, I'm going to barrel through. You either allow me to capture your knight for free, or if you run away, I check here, and I win your rook, and I get a queen. So my opponent obviously didn't do that, being one of the best players in Canada, so that quite didn't. Unfortunately for me, he was able to calculate all that. So he played rook c1, and I just captured on b3. And here I miscalculated here. I thought I could capture here, rook capture, rook here, and after rook captures, queen captures, for example, let's just say capture, capture, rook c8, and then capture, capture, and I thought this position was fine for me because my opponent's king was so open. But I forgot my d6 pawn was hanging, and this position is very lost for black. So even though I did capture on c1, that was a mistake. You want to keep the tension here because, as you can see, there's no benefit of just capturing here and allowing your opponent's bad rook to become a good rook, and your bad rook to be a bad rook still. Instead, I should have played queen b6 earlier, but due to my miscalculation, I didn't do that. Queen b6 earlier would have been much better. Now here my opponent blundered. He played knight c4 and gave me the free pawn in the center, which is very strong. Which is very strong and very good for me now, because you can see my opponent's king side, queen side, it's not very happy. And by taking this pawn here, my opponent doesn't really have any dreams of playing e5 anymore. Now you might say, can you just capture on d6, which is what my opponent did. But the idea here is I can play a very, very strong, very, very good in-between move. Can you guys figure it out? I hope you guys can, because the idea is you have to capture on c4. And if your opponent captures this way, he kind of loses the bishop this way, so he'll be down a piece. So that's a big no-no for him. So he cannot capture this bishop. Instead, he has to capture our bishop here. But we have another in-between move, which I hope you guys can see, because if you just move your rook away, well, you lose your bishop. The other in-between move is here. And as you can see, black's pieces are barreling down on the opponent's king. King is forced to go to a2. And then rook e8 is played, attacking the bishop and forcing it to go back to a3. Now, black is up a pawn here. And as you can see through the evaluation, he's actually minus 1.36. At this point, I realized I'm doing quite well. In fact, it's minus 2 in this position. And I realized to myself, this is one of the strongest players in Canada. And if I just get a draw in this game, I'm fairly sure my team would have won as well. So I offered a draw here. But my opponent, being the strongest player in the world, not in the world, sorry. It's not Magnus Carlsen, but being one of the strongest players in Canada, realized since I'm not the best player because I do make mistakes, and under time pressure, I was getting under very quickly. He declined my draw offer, even though the position was quite good for him. Now that is the confidence of a strong player. Here, I made a mistake. I was too greedy. Here, I decided to take another pawn. I decided to take a pawn, and I was up a pawn over here. As you can see, I was very happy here. But the idea was, this was a mistake because taking that pawn allowed this bishop to be happy and allowed it to be active. This pawn isn't going anywhere. Instead, I should have played a move like knight e5, blockading the pawn and saying, what are you going to do? Look at my powerful knight. This bishop, even though it's on a good diagonal, isn't doing anything. None of these squares are important. And this knight is on a very important square. However, I didn't do that. Instead, I played the greedy bishop takes here. And my opponent has lots of activity now because of my misplaced pieces. He played bishop b2. My queen goes back, threatening his bishop. He played queen c3. Quick question. Do you take on b2, free bishop? No, because of queen takes g7. That would be checkmate. And it would have been quite good for you. So I played f6 to defend. Knight f6 was recommended, but I don't see anything wrong with f6. Bishop f1. And I hope you guys can, think about what bishop f1 is doing. It is getting out of our threat, but it's also threatening bishop c4. So don't get tricked by that. So knight b6. And here is an instructive lesson for you guys. King h8 is good, but after queen here, I was scared of rook c7. So I played a very passive move. I played queen b7. Queen b7 is bad. Never play a move like queen b7. Remember guys, the best defense is often a good offense. Instead, queen e6 was better, threatening this pawn, but more importantly, if the opponent ever did this, we have this tricky move, forking the rook and the queen. So that's not good. So instead, I play queen b7, which is bad, allowing my opponent's queen to snake into such a good position. Do you see that? This queen is much more powerful than my queen. And here, I just played rook c8, offering a trade. My opponent said, no way do I want to trade with you. So I said, do you want to trade the now? Because I'm up a pawn, my opponent knew not to trade. And here, I played bishop c2, threatening this pawn, getting this queen to be stuck here. And here, my opponent's rook entered my position. And things get quite scary. However, in this position, I realized, again, the best defense is a good offense. So I played queen d1. My opponent played rook takes b7. My opponent is known for a very strong attacking player, so here I was a bit scared because I realized, there's a lot of threats against my king. If I take here, it might be lost because after queen e7 check, there are a lot of things happening to my king, as you can see. It's quite scary because after something like this, queen e6 check, if I move something like this, as you can see, I'm getting checkmated. That's not good. So this is quite scary. So I can't really take on g7 because of all the threats that I just showed you guys. So instead I took on f1 and said, I'm up a piece now. It's up to you to figure out how to win against me, if there is a win. And as you can see, bishop captures here doesn't work because the queen captures back. So I want you guys to think now. If you were white, would you play a move like queen here? Probably not. A move like queen there doesn't really quite do anything because as you can see, not only is this move guarded against because of this, but because I have some pretty deadly threats with a move like bishop here. And the idea is if your king comes out, I might be the one checkmating you if you're not too careful, right? For example, king here, and I think we have a pretty fancy checkmate in 2 here. Alright, checkmate in 3. I hope you guys can pause your videos and help me figure out this variation. Now, of course, this isn't what my opponent played, but if you guys pause your videos, I think this move works because after pawn captures here, queen captures, and after any move, like for example here or here, let's say here, we have queen to a4 checkmate. So after queen takes f1, my opponent played one more move, which was rook takes a7. And here I did the biggest blunder anybody could ever do in any game. And I hope you guys don't do things like I do. Here in Canada, I have a reputation of taking draws and winning positions and losing and resigning now. And losing positions based off this one game. And I resigned in this game, as you can see, and that's the biggest blunder anyone can make. My opponent after the game told me never to resign in a position like this because I'm actually up a piece and there's actually so much that I can do. Afterwards, he also showed me game analysis and hold up, just check this out. As you can see here, it is negative 8.2 for black. It's as if black is up a queen in this position and I resigned in this position because I thought there was nothing stopping queen here or the capture of my knight. So I thought to myself, well, there's no point in playing anymore. It's quite lost. Now, let's see if you guys are better than I was. Can you guys find a winning combination here that pretty much destroys white and stops this queen e7 move? I don't know why this move didn't just come up into my mind because it's quite obvious. At the time, I was only thinking of moves like queen b1 check, bishop e1 check, but none of these really work. So, pause your videos, figure it out. And I hope you paused your videos. But if you guys can't figure it out or you just want to, see the spectacular move, it's still obvious, just rook b8. Just saying, I'm going to line my rook up against a very important file against your king, and I'm just going to defend my knight. Your rook is trapped here. It can't move anywhere because rook a8 check is deadly against your king. And you can't take here because my queen's defending here. So the only piece you can move is this queen. And if you move a queen here, you have a very fancy checkmate. Hopefully you guys can pause your videos in this position and figure it out. This is super spectacular. I wasn't able to figure it out because I was low on time. But if you guys did, good on you. The move is queen b1 check. king to a3, and this amazing knight c4 check. The idea is if you move king here, this is probably checkmate soon, as you can see. Oh, yeah, this is checkmate right here. Or if instead of that, after knight c4 check, instead of running, but you take here, it's the obvious checkmate. Automatically, queen takes b2. It's a very cool combination, one I didn't see that allowed me to be in such a strong position. And this is one of my proudest games, not because I could have won, but more importantly, as you can see in the middle game, I was able to hold my own and have my own ideas against somebody who was 2400 rated FIDE-wise. Not at the time, he was 2300 perhaps, like highly 2300 rated, FIDE rated. But it showed me that I had the potential, even with an opening that a lot of people considered dubious, the Philidor, in a time that I didn't study that much chess. It was able to show me that I was able to play well. And I hope you guys did enjoy this game. And if you guys did, I hope you guys hope you guys smash that subscribe button below. And I hope you guys can come join me again in another amazing chess related video. Here's a question for you guys to answer below. What was your biggest take from this game? My biggest take is perhaps you shouldn't resign in games that you think is losing. And have self-confidence in myself, because in that game, from start to beginning, I thought I was doing quite badly. But as you can see throughout the game, through the engine analysis, Black was actually doing very well against even such a strong opponent. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys soon.